Hi, so today we're going to learn how to add effects to a page on load. So for example, as this page loads, it's going to fade in, and then our banner is going to slide in. Okay, so let's jump right into our code. Okay, so let's get started. So we have a div with the class name of parent container, and within this div is where all our content is going to go. So we're going to start by building the nav bar and the Jumbotron section. So we have some content to fade in and out. Okay, so we have a div with the class name of navbar, and within it we have an image, which is our little mock brand logo. And now we're going to build our Jumbotron, which is going to have a background image, and it's going to have a span tag within it that contains a little banner. Let's just make it an image. So within the span tag, we're going to have a banner. And we're going to make this banner slide in and out, okay? So right now this is going to look terrible. We're going to style it a little bit. So let's target our navbar image, and we're going to give it a width of 200 pixels. We're going to target the navbar, and I'm going to give it some global variables, which I assigned earlier, just to give it a little bit of margin bottom, so a little bit of space, and a little bit of box shadow, so there's a little bit more contrast. As you can see now, there's a line, and we can see when the navbar ends. Now let's work on the Jumbotron. So we need a background image for the Jumbotron. So I'm going to target the Jumbotron class. Nope, I went too far. There we go. Okay. So we have an image called Jumbotron. And we need to give it a height value of, let's say, 500, so it's visible. Let's see how this is looking. Perfect. Now we just need to center this banner. To center it, we need to set the Jumbotron's display value to flex, and now we'll align all of the items horizontally. So we'll use justify content center, and now we'll align them vertically. Align items center as well. And these are all Flexbox properties. I previously made a tutorial on Flexbox if you guys want to check that out. Okay, so it doesn't look the prettiest, but our banner is centered here. Now what we want to do is we want to make the page on load fade in. So to do that, we'll target the body tag, which is a parent container to all of our content, okay? So let's make some classes. Okay, so we need to set the opacity value of body to 0. So we're going to create a fade out class, which we're going to add to body, and it's going to set its opacity value to 0. We need a transition property. So this is basically letting CSS know which property is going to transition, so which property is going to be altered, so it can listen to it. Transition duration is how long you want this change to last. So in our case, we're saying let's make it last 2 seconds, okay? So we need to add both of these classes to the body, so we'll add class equals fade out, and as you can see now it's not visible because the body's opacity has been set to 0. And then we'll let it know how it needs to behave when its opacity gets changed. So we go fade transition. As you can see, transition property, it's listening for opacity, and it's going to make the transition duration last 2 seconds, okay? And finally, in the CSS, we need to make a third property, which we're going to add via JavaScript. Or actually, for fade in, we could simplify things, and we'll use a toggle method. I'll show you in a second. Okay, so in JavaScript, we need to target our body tag. We're going to use document.querySelector to target it. and we're going to make a function that will perform this operation. We'll call it fade, and you don't have to use an arrow function, you can use an old-fashioned one as well that would work the same. And within this function, we're going to have a set timeout function. A set timeout function is basically a function that fires after X amount of time. And this time, it's going to be, let's say, 2,000 milliseconds, which equals 2 seconds, okay? So within the set timeout function, we're going to target our body, and we're going to use class list dot toggle, so turn off the fade out property. So we're basically saying after the page has loaded 2 seconds later, we want you to toggle the fade out class off. So changing its opacity value. So we need to call this function. So we're going to do body.add event listener. We're listening for the load. And finally, we need to call the function. And this should be working. There we go, guys. So let's reload. 1, 2. Perfect. Okay, so next we're going to learn a new effect, which is we're going to make the span tag slide in from the side of the page. So I also went ahead and styled the span a little bit, just to make it look a little bit better. Okay, so right now it's obviously in the center of the page, and we centered it using Flexbox. Now what we want the page to do is that when the page loads, we want the banner to slide in from the left side, okay? So let's make some classes. So we're going to make a class with the name of slide before, and we're going to set its, let's say, right property to 1,000 pixels, which means push it from the right side to the left 1,000 pixels. That will make more sense in a second. We're going to make a class named slide transition, so the span tag knows how to behave when these changes occur. Okay, so we have a class named slide transition, and we've set its position value to relative, so we can move it around the page with properties like right, left. And we gave it a transition property of right, so that it's listening to the transition. And we're going to say make the transition last, let's say 1 second, so it's pretty quick, okay? And here we need to make one last class, slide after, which will recenter the image. Because the image, or let's call it the span tag, was pushed from the right side all the way to the left 1,000 pixels. We're going to remove this class and add the slide after class, which will move it right back to the center, okay? So we need to add slide before and slide transition to our span tag. So slide before and slide transition. And now the span tag's not going to be visible. So we load the page, it fades in. And now the span tag's not visible because it got pushed to the left from the right side. So since we gave it a value of right 1,000 pixels, it got pushed from the right to the left over here 1,000 pixels. Okay, so to make it slide back in, we need to use another set timeout function. We're going to set this one to 4,000, so it triggers 2 seconds after the page loads, because the page is going to fade in at 2 seconds, and then 2 seconds later, we want our span tag to slide in. So we're going to select our span up here with document.querySelector. span. And let's make sure we don't have any other span tags on the page and we're not affecting anything, and we don't. We're just targeting this one span tag. Okay. So within our set timeout, we are going to use span.classList. So we're getting access to the classes that are attached to the span, and we're removing slide before. So we're removing the right property, which is pushing it 1,000 pixels, and then span.classList.add slide after, which sets its right property value back to 0, centering it. So let's see if this works. So 1, 2, and there we go. Perfect, guys. So let's see if we can time that. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect. And you don't always need to have it slide in from the left. You can have it slide in from any angle. Let me show you guys really quick. So we'll change the transition property from right. We'll set it to top. So we want to push our span tag from the top to the bottom by 1,000 pixels. And then when we add the slide after class, we want to zero it back out to 0. So now we're going to see it slide in from the bottom. So let's reload our page. And there you go. So you can do all sorts of cool effects. So let me just show you guys really quick how to make it like rotate. So instead of listening for top, we're going to listen to transform. And then in our slide after class, we're going to do a transform property, set its value to rotate, let's say the y-axis, and we'll rotate it by 360 degrees. And I'll share the code with you guys so you guys can follow along. So it should rotate soon. See that? How cool is that? So you can play with all sorts of cool properties. Let's make it rotate on the x-axis. Let's reload it. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. Bye-bye for now.